The next issue I'd like to kind of touch on is the economy in the state of Nebraska. Or I should say just economies in general. After the Trump Biden election, I was reading some comments on the internet. And what I'm about to tell you is factually true. The individual was talking about, he said Donald Trump had won 2,500 counties and Joe Biden won 500 counties. So that is correct. That's true. And then he points out that Donald Trump's 2,500 counties generates 30% of the GDP. And Biden's 500 counties generates 70% of the GDP. And those two, that is also factually correct. But here's what's interesting. If any of you have spent a little time with economics or even in your local chamber of commerce, they will tell you that every time a dollar hits a community, it rolls over 7 times. 7 times when a dollar comes in. So back to the Bush-Biden or the Trump-Biden discussion, how do you get the 70% GDP without the 30% GDP first? Because where does the first dollar come from? It comes from your natural resources within your country or within your area or your state. Once that grass is turned into cattle or milk, beef or pork, or once those trees have been cut down and turned into lumber, or once the fields have been planted and crops have been grown, that's where your first dollar comes from. And that dollar goes into a community and then it rolls and rolls and rolls. So the question is, doesn't it seem rather important to keep your first dollar or to keep generating it? So if you agree with that idea that maybe we should keep the first dollar, maybe we should look at some of the laws that we have on the books right now that are not being enforced. And the one that comes to mind in particular is there's a ban on packer ownership of livestock. Now, if any of you understand what happened at this time when this law was passed, in 1998, the pork packing industry started claiming that they didn't have enough shackle space for the hogs that were fat. So therefore, they shoved the price down to $8 a hog. They still killed them. They just shoved the price down. Now, not everybody got $8 a hog. Those that had sweetheart contracts with the big hog outfits, they got better than $8 a hog. But most people who didn't did not. As a result of that, in 1999, Senator Cap Dirks passed a law called Ban on Packer Ownership. And what that does, it says the packers are not allowed to own cattle or hogs more than 14 days before slaughter. Because what that does is that gives them an economic advantage where they don't have to go into the market to purchase. They've already know that they have their supply lines met. So they don't have to competitively bid in an open market. So what that does is those who don't have those sweetheart contests are forced to are put in a very difficult situation. But anyway, the point is that the Cap passed this law and it passed 49-0, and Governor Mike Johanns signed it into law. Now, what it did was it created a position that there was an individual at the Attorney General's office, and that's all that individual did was to make sure that there was no one breaking this idea of packers owning livestock for more than 14 days. That position was defunded 1 year later. The law is still on the books, and there are hefty fines that go with that. But nobody enforces it. No one. Now, as a result of this, today, 90% of the hog producers are gone. 10% is all that's left. It's not like there's fewer hogs. There's still the same number of hogs. But when you lose that number of producers, you start losing like the feed store in the town. And when that goes, 3 or 4 jobs goes with it. This idea of efficiency being good, yes, it is good, but extreme efficiency, I don't know. Because remember our theory, every time a dollar rolls into a community, it rolls over 7 times. If if your first dollar becomes so efficient, then that's fewer dollars going into the community. Maybe those resources, those natural resources that are being chased down, what I referred to agriculture and forestry and the other resources, maybe we need to have a little more inefficiency there. So that creates more dollars that go to a community that rolls over, which creates more jobs. Because after all, if the pork industry is so efficient that we've eliminated jobs, it doesn't matter how efficient it is or how cheap your pork chop is if you don't have a job to pay for the pork chop.